I started contemplating my own death, right? And from that vantage point, I'm like, I don't want to just, be a hamster and follow a certain path. I was a rebel in a way. So that stayed with me, actually, contemplating your life from the vantage point of the end, right? And I ran away. I ran away from corporate, ran away from Pittsburgh. I went to Puerto Rico.
This is the One Day Podcast. My name is Omar Al-Majali, and each week I am bringing you some of the most accomplished and inspiring minds in the Middle East and the world to give you a glimpse of their professional life and pull back the curtain a bit on the real and untold story of their success, to inspire you and help you learn from those who have walked the walk so you could move one day closer to your own goals. Hope you enjoy this episode. This is the One Day Podcast. Welcome, everyone. Today's guest is a brilliant mind who is here to share with you strategies on how to unlock your potential and tap into your creativity. Dr. Yazan Hijazi, our guest for the day, is a scientist, an engineer, a professor at IE University, director of innovation at a very well-reputable university in Jordan. He is also the founder of the Human Engineering Center, which focuses on optimizing the human potential to enhance the performance of organizations and teams. And Dr. Yazan's fascination in the human potential has pushed him to explore and study topics such as creativity, innovation, and the ways people like you and me can take advantage of the under-leveraged resources that is found innately in each and every one of us, hidden deeply inside. We're going to get into all of that and more, but welcome, Dr. Yazan.
Well, I'm excited. Thank you for a great introduction.
بالعكس مش من قيمتك دكتور. And to be honest, as I told you when I was preparing this intro and when I was preparing for the topics that I wanted to explore with you during our discussion, I was overwhelmed in a good way because mashallah your background is so rich and diverse in credentials and experiences and qualifications. But today is definitely going to be an exciting one.
Ready to dive right in.
We're going to dive into all of it, inshallah. But before we do, obviously the question I always like to kick off the convo with is, did you ever imagine that you would be the Dr. Yazan you are today with all the experiences you've accumulated, with the name that you've built yourself? If I take you back 20 years, did you see any of this coming?
Great start. So yes and no. Yes, in the sense that there's definitely an arch of my life, an arrow, if you will. So strong sense of direction without pre-made up notions of where I should end up. So I find myself, regardless of whether I'm up or down, I'm exactly where I need to be. So, but no, I did not have a vision board and said, at this age, I'm going to have this company and I'm going to be doing that. But always been curious as to what wants to unfold, if you will, and emerge.
So you feel like curiosity was a big factor in everything and in the journey that you've been on, whether that be personal or professional?
Yeah, I think maybe that's a hallmark of my childhood, actually. Curiosity. And not because I was special, just because all kids are curious. And it definitely has been a driver of wanting to know what's over the hill, so to speak, and what's under the rock. So I do believe curiosity is a beautiful human trait that not only allows us to learn and develop and grow, but also allows us to discover, and shine. So curiosity is our friend.
Hello. And we're going to learn more about what that meant in your life, because as I had mentioned in the intro, Doctor, you're an advisor, a speaker, an NLP practitioner. You used to be an engineer. So maybe I think a good place for us to start is for you to give us some, and also to give us some context into this conversation, is give us just like a high-level view on the timeline of events, of how you started as an electrical engineer, and then working on these massive projects in the US, and then made these several pivots along the way to where you are today with all these different career branches and experiences that you've taken on.
Fantastic. So maybe a starting point would be a curiosity, back to curiosity.
Hello.
Growing up, I was very curious about life, very playful, and really like to tinker with things. So I've always been the fixer in the house for everything that is working fine, doesn't need to be fixed. But, I would take it and put it apart. Under the pretext that I'm fixing it.
Yeah.
So you can imagine lots of fights with my brother as I fixed many of his gadgets and toys. So perhaps, I had a kind of regular childhood. I'm born of Palestinian parents. My mom's from Jerusalem. My dad's from Jaffa. I've never lived there. I'm born in Jordan, raised in Jordan till I was around 18, 19. Had a couple of years when, my dad was doing his residency. He used to be a doctor in England. But so pretty regular, curious, playful childhood. But I do remember that perhaps around age 12, 13, I became a little skeptical about everything. Looking at the divides and looking at everything from Palestini, Urduni to in-group, out-group, to religion.
These systems.
The systems and the paradigms,
right.
Under which we live. I couldn't swallow it. Right. So I think that brought me on a quest of, for a long time in my life, I became the seeker. Right. So, I'm looking, and exploring and really also challenging my own worldviews and the views of the world around me. Having lived through, at least on TV and through stories of our parents and our family and friends, the Palestinian issue, that at a young age as well kind of expanded my horizon and depth of thinking. And I just couldn't fall into the simple black and white, we're right, you're wrong. We have the one true truth and we have the one true religion. So I grew up with that skepticism, and I was actually I'm Muslim by birth, but I was in a Christian school, Orthodoxia in Jordan. And that was great because, I never saw that divide. So yeah, that set me off on a quite a journey, I would say. And then, school, what are you going to do? Decided to go for engineering, right? My dad told me something. He's like, listen, you can always do business, but you can't study business and then do engineering. So you can always fall back on business. And he didn't want to let me go out to the States at the time for various reasons. I was, young and foolish, but I was good academically. Right?
Yeah.
So I studied a couple of years in Jordan, and I was working hard, man, to just convince him. It's like, give me my chance.
Yeah,
I want to.
like here I am.
I needed to leave my bubble. So at 19, I went to Miami. I started my engineering journey there, electrical engineering. I've worked everything, waiter, bartender, little hustle here, little hustle there, making ends meet. And then I ended up going for my PhD, really. Never thought I would. It was never like, oh, I'm going to get a PhD. Sort of like 2001, hairy Arab man after September 11th, like, you're not going to get a job, man. So I'm like, okay,
I'll get my PhD.
I'll stay.
I might as well, yani.
It was an offer.
I
was on full scholarship, and I was
wow.
making money and working. I was leading a laboratory at the university I was at. It's called FIU, Florida International University in Miami. And so it was kind of like, I'll just do my PhD. And then midpoint, I'm like, okay, I got to produce something here. So I did take it on more seriously. And so that was my academic journey. This led me actually to a job. I landed a job at Seagate Technologies. They manufacture hard disk drives in Pittsburgh, which was wrong direction from Miami to Pittsburgh. Like, no,
An adjustment.
an adjustment. Yeah. And, I had a crisis, as if you will, of purpose, maybe at that point. Sort of like, okay, I got the job. Everybody's clapping. Everybody seems to feel like I'm on the right direction.
Yeah.
I was making more money than I ever did. I mean, I was a student, but something was off, right? Something was just pointing in another direction, and I didn't even know which direction. So yeah, I think there was a pivotal moment in my life during that time while I was working in Seagate. Pittsburgh is ugly generally, but they have lovely cemeteries. And I used to love to go to these cemeteries. And one, be amazed because in Jordan, Sahab Cemetery is like very, very awful. And this is green and lush and trees and squirrels and animals. And I started contemplating my own death, right? And from that vantage point, I'm like, I don't want to just be a hamster and follow a certain path. I was a rebel in a way. So that stayed with me, actually, contemplating your life from the vantage point of the end, right? And I ran away. I ran away from corporate, ran away from Pittsburgh. I went to Puerto Rico,
Just like that, you just dropped everything and you're like, peace out?
Yeah, I worked for 6 months and then I'm like, I need to leave. Made an exit plan, went back to Miami, and then universe conspired and I got a interview to go to university, very not known, like, Puerto Rico is kind of like third world country with like a first world system.
Yeah. That just
yeah, and that's I think that was pivotal in the change of direction. In Puerto Rico, I was a research professor, got them some money to do research, set up a lab. But then I was like teaching. I was in front of these kids, even though, again, it was never I want to teach. And I started digressing like crazy, talking about things that I was battling with, like purpose, leadership, like what's wrong, what's happening here.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, 8 years I spent in Puerto Rico, and I had the best education in my life, learning from people who were not PhDs, but they were people of community, of earth, of wisdom. So that was a beautiful chapter in my life. And then 8 years into it, island fever. Sort of like, okay, island's getting small for what I want to do. What's next? I've learned, I've done. Didn't want to go work in a university and teach. Didn't want to go back to corporate. Universe conspires again, and I land a job in financial services in Dubai. Talk about, man, major change of
scenery,
context,
and exposure, and context, and people, and pace.
Totally. I mean, you live in Dubai, you know what it's like as well. And that context, DIFC, money, investments, give me your millions. Second pivotal moment in my life was when this whole thing went belly up, right? So this was I was managing director for the firm, the Dubai office, not the entire organization. And we were doing factoring of receivables in Brazil. Legitimate business, actually a cash cow. But my mentor, so-called, and big brother who brought me in, the owner, he was skimming off the top of it, He got greedy and started opening like new businesses with investor money.
Yeah.
So SEC caught on, lawsuits, snowball effect.
Not good.
The whole thing exploded. I lost all my money because I had skin in the game, which was fine considering the fact that I lost other people's money as well.
Yeah.
Friends and family, And again, that was sort of like, wow, okay, so what now? How do I stand from this? Everything that I've been learning, everything that I've been preaching, everything that I've been trying to acquire and inhabit and embody, what am I going to do now? And alhamdulillah, I was able to face it head on, did not shy away from the very difficult conversations. And then an opportunity came by miraculous, I would say, coincidence. And I ended up going to Portugal in the midst of all this chaos and did a 12-day silent retreat.
Nice. That's
Like
amazing.
complete disconnect, regroup, recenter. It was beautiful. My family was, very supportive.
Yeah.
And they thought I was crazy, obviously, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not the
yeah.
first time.
I've done something similar to
Um,
that, and my parents thought that, yeah, my whole family
yeah.
thought that I was crazy.
And
Yeah.
I would say, alhamdulillah. Yani, maybe curiosity was the beginning word, and maybe the ending word would be gratitude, because out of that catastrophe, in a way, um, I was able to be here in Jordan when my father got diagnosed with cancer, and I
Oof,
was
sorry to hear that.
able to be there in service to him, literally at his feet, and passing those times that I would never have been able to do had I been in Puerto Rico or been in Dubai. So, وعسى أن تكرهوا شيئا, I was always, you know, trusting that this is exactly what needs to be happening right now.
100%. Wow, what a journey, Dr. Yazan. And I think like the biggest learning from what you just told us is that we always need to be open to opportunities and not get fixated on a particular career or a particular journey, because sometimes we outgrow that place or outgrow that particular phase in our lives. And if the world around us is shaking, sometimes I believe it's for the best. Yani I feel like what happened with you when you came to Dubai, maybe you were just super out of alignment. And being in the financial
Yeah,
sector, it's like a dirty industry.
yeah,
شوي هيك, it's a different vibe, the
yeah,
city. So your world
yeah.
had to shake because maybe your soul or whatever was seeking, something else that is more in alignment with
Yes.
with what with what you
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well articulated, Yami, and maybe to kind of just cap that chapter, um, it was not a mistake.
no.
It was not like, oh shit, that happened to me. It was like, thank you. And sometimes, there's a beautiful saying in Spanish, says una raya más al tigre. Una raya means like one more mark. Tigre is tiger. So una raya más al tigre is one more mark on the tiger. I mean, the tiger is full with marks, right? So it's you don't learn and grow and transcend, through wishful thinking and although be positive, but the positive thinking that everything is, peaches and cream. You actually grow through that grind, through that friction, through that. That's how you build muscle, that resistance, and that play and give and take with life. So
yeah, through those dark souls of the night that we go through. Me, I'm a huge believer in that. I believe that life gives us signs, and that if we are silent enough, we can see them, we can listen to them, but we have to act. That's the most important thing, or otherwise, we'll stay complacent. Dr. Yazan, out of everything you've talked about, out of like all these different qualifications, maybe that you have accumulated, or all these designations that you find on your LinkedIn, that or anyone would find on your LinkedIn profile, which of those are mostly you today? Or if I had to give you a business card and you had to type one designation on it and give that to people for the next 5 years, at this point, what is that? What would that business card say?
I stopped printing business cards.
Digital business card, QR code.
What my business card had on it was, like a tagline, that being human implies possibility, not limitation. That doesn't answer your question. To answer your question, I would say none of it. None of it really defines who I am, because these things are labels. And ultimately, if you define yourself as such, then you confine yourself. To define sometimes is to confine. But also all of them, right? I mean, as far as my personality and my knowledge and skill, and they're all kind of integrated. I'm a huge believer in integral, in integration, in bringing, whether it's cuisine. I love fusion. It's like, give me some Thai food and mix it with some Mexican. What happens? Like interesting things might happen. So I like to integrate. So in one sense, on the physical plane, on the professional plane of my life. It's all of them. But on the non-physical plane, it's none of them, because you can never define yourself by a label. And the PhD is a label. And most often it's a label to do jack shit and sit on your ass and believe that you've climbed and reached some tip of some illusional mountain. So, and I've seen that a lot, right? You know, people think, yeah, PhD, electrical engineering, you know, it's hard. It's supposed to be smart. Uh, yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about that, but it's a pinhole in the universe. And as long as you kind of you get too stuck to the labels, then what if the label goes? I mean, 10 years from now, Omar is you know a super famous podcaster slash, and then you know, God forbid something happens and you can't speak anymore for some reason, right? You know, are you gone? You know, and that happened to me actually. You know, like sort of looking at the labels, and I play the guitar. I used to play a lot more, and then I developed some like chronic ulnar nerve injury, and I would look at the guitar and I would feel like, oh my God, you know, but I'm a guitarist. You know, music is me, right? You know, who am I without being able to play the guitar? Well, obviously, if I stuck to, you know, that identity, then, you know, I would have been shooting myself in the foot. So I think there's levels of identity, you know, what we do to make a living. And but in the ultimate question, which is a really good question for everybody to ask, who am I? And perhaps even more importantly than who am I, because sort of that's overused, is what am I? You know, like what are you? So am I the PhD and the NLP and, you know, well, that can come and go. I mean, my PhD could become obsolete in a couple of years. I could have amnesia and forget everything I learned, but something's still here to witness that. So whatever you are, it has to do with that witnessing capacity rather than the, you know, the roles and the layers and the labels. So
You are a
sorry,
spiritual being.
long answer to
No, I love it. I love it. Because, and funny enough that we're talking about this because me and my friends, me and two of my friends were having lunch on Saturday, and we just talked
yeah.
about that, like the definition of, if someone asks me, who am I? Your immediate response would be to define yourself by the career that you have, or by who you are, or your age, or where you're from. But I feel like people need to really be asking this question of, who are you? Like, who am I? And just like stare at a blank paper and see what comes out, like to try and unlayer who you are. Because I feel like, as you said, we shouldn't be confining ourselves or labeling ourselves. I feel like we are multidimensional beings, and there's a lot of layers to us than just, you know, our career or designation. Before we talk about the topic of human potential, which you teased a bit, and about the mindset possibility, I want to ask you a question to frame this conversation. Do you agree with the statement or with the concept or idea that the average person tends to play below their potential, whether that be at work or life? Do you feel like we as humans maybe perform below our potential capacity to perform better? I don't know. I mean, from that standpoint,
Most people are happy being mediocre anyways, right? You know, it's like, you know, it's like the boat is moving and just don't rock it, you know, and power to them. You know, nobody can be arrogant to say that, you know, we all have to be working on ourselves. And some people, you know, like hunter gatherers, were not necessarily working on themselves, you know. There were many periods of history where it was just kind of like, wow, man, just boring life. And, you know, day in, day out, sun goes up, sun goes down, and I'm alive. And one day I'm going to die. So most people are happy being mediocre anyways, right? And I do believe that we have some work to do into, you know, uncovering for those people that, hey, there's another opportunity, which is the human potential, right? The possibility mindset, as you framed it. And yes, I mean, imagine that you are a grand piano, right? With all these keys. And most people are happy playing a tune with 3 notes. Ding, 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 right? And it might be like amusing and, it's got rhythm and style. I mean, you can do a lot with 3 notes. But then what about all the other notes? And that's the unlived, that's the latent potential that lies in and outside of you, right? Inside of you in terms of capacities, and audacious, big, hairy, audacious, goals and dreams, as some say. But there's also the external, right? Potential of, leveraging opportunity.
I want to talk about the possibility mindset because you've touched on it several times. What does a possibility mindset really mean, and what is the opposite of that? A limiting mindset?
Yes, limiting mindset is a simple way, or a fixed mindset is a simple way to say, like you're not growing, right? Sort of like you can grow, man or woman. So what, why don't you, right? And this has to do as well with, our living in a manner that brings forth our highest and best selves. You go to a wedding and you don't wear shorts and a flip-flop, and you groom yourself and you look good, and and you're showing up for life, right, in all its beautiful glory. And how are you showing up? So possibility mindset is a conversation that you have with yourself and with the world around you, around obviously what is possible, right? I mean, the word impossible is I am possible, I'm possible, right? So I think one would have to start by saying, do you believe that there is a necessity for you to grow? Because if you're not, then we can't talk about possibility mindset, right? We need to have a different conversation. But assuming that we are on the same page and we say, yeah, I want to grow because, I want to shine. And why do you want to shine? Well, because you can, because it's glorious, because Taus, flaunts its feathers like there's no tomorrow, right? Because it's beautiful. It can. And, good friend of mine told me, our ultimate purpose is to shine, right? And I find that very, very simple, yet powerful enough to say, well, what does that mean? Possibility mindset does imply certain, let's say, working models, right? Working models in your head, right? So if, you're a negative person and you have a fixed mindset, we're off on the wrong foot already.
Yeah.
But a possibility mindset knows that possibility is unknown. So there's an embrace for everything that you don't know. Also everything you know, because you want to bring the best forth in you, right?
Yeah.
But everything that you don't know, celebrating that you don't know, and that life can and will surprise you. And then having the agility, right, to say, well, which direction do I want to grow? I mean, a plant does not, check out the landscape and be like, I'm going to grow in that direction because that's where the sun is. And it may set off as such, but then, another plant comes and shades it. And it's sort of like, well, I'm going to have to change direction because my purpose is to shine. I'm following the sun, right? So agility of mind and agility to navigate, which is a super important characteristics now of like leadership, right? Everything's changing around you at an accelerated pace. So if you're not agile enough to change direction and grow in a different direction, then, that possibility is limited. The other thing is to ask yourself, as you're growing, why am I developing, right? This whole notion about personal development. Why are you developing? I mean, you could be locked into a narrative that, I'm developing because I want to be seen and loved and accepted. Maybe you won't frame it as such, but questioning, why am I developing is kind of important. So a possibility mindset to make it more, let's say, a practical one needs to question to what end, because possibility implies development as well. So you can't take possibility and personal development out of out of each other, right? Possibility means I can develop. Why am I developing? What's the bigger calling here? And what's the deeper meaning? What means to me more than my own life, in a way, right? What's that big mountain I'm willing to die on, right? And then celebrating everything that you don't know, living in that mystery, and not closing the door on what is possible, right? Because today your dreams are here, but if in 10 years your dreams are still here, you're missing the possibility, right? So going in with that humility of not knowing is super important, so that the possible can come. Creativity is the ability to be different in useful ways.
The ability
Right?
to be different in useful ways.
Yeah. And to measure creativity, and yes, you can and should measure creativity, you need to look at least at three basic dimensions. One is originality, right? How original it is. Two is utility. Three, what I call the wow factor, right? That's the emotional appeal of something. It's like, why does this sneaker draw you in more than the other? It's not just because, it's got better materials and whatever, right? There's an emotional appeal to that curve, to that line, and when we talk about utility, what gets people to say, wow, like drop their jaw and be like, yeah, that's a wow. And then in a context of business, then you can add different parameters to say, well, we need to be on cost and on time. So, an idea that's going to take $1 million and 12 months to accomplish might be original, useful, and has a wow factor, but then can't do it because of our kind of constraints. And constraints is a good friend of creativity, right? Again, a paradox of, go all out, creative, break some rules. But then constraints actually, so if I tell you, come up with something creative for this problem, then you have like 3 months. You're not going to do anything until like the last 3 days. If I tell you you've got 3 hours to come up with a creative solution, that time constraint brings forth creativity. We say الحاجة أم الاختراع for a reason, because that الحاجة, that constraint, that needs, kind of fosters and nurtures creativity.
You coach leaders, executives, and professionals. Do people typically come to you because, or I mean, during your coaching sessions, is that a topic that you typically explore with executives or leaders, professionals?
Creativity?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, more so in today's times, right? Because if you're not creative, one, somebody else is already beating you to it. Two, you're incapable. This goes back to growth as well, right? And the possibility mindset. If everything around you is changing at an accelerated rate, exponential rate, right? And the environment is volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, right? Then creativity becomes your tool to navigate, right? And creativity in that conversation with executives and boards and companies can't be decoupled from innovation, right? And maybe this is a good segue to clarify the difference. In both are a process in a way, right? You engage in a creative process. In fact, the biggest predictor of creative output is not personality, IQ, openness, introvert, extrovert. It's none of those. It's, do you follow a process? So both creativity and innovation is a process. An analogy that I like to use is that innovation is the engine. The processes and structures and, and strategies, what's our innovation profile? Where are we playing? What's the oncoming disruption? How are we positioned? So it's a holistic business conversation when you talk about innovation. But then you may have a Lamborghini parked outside, and if it doesn't have any fuel, it's not going to go anywhere. It's nice, shine, and bright, but useless. So creativity is the fuel for innovation, right? If you will. And maybe to add to that analogy, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners are, entrepreneurs at heart to be, or right there in the battlefield. Then entrepreneurship becomes the chassis of the car, the wheels. What tread do you use for this terrain? How am I going to get there? I have a strong engine, I've got fuel. Where are we going? That's where your mission and your vision, as a startup or as an entrepreneur in a big company, that's and that thinking is indispensable nowadays. It's not a coincidence that it's such a buzz. You hear creativity, innovation, and overused, but so
yeah, I can tell the difference is clear between innovation and creativity. I never thought about it that way before. I think it's really, really interesting. What's also really interesting is that in one of your talks, you highlight a very sad reality, but a very important statistic around creativity, and it's around how school and the school system kills our creativity. And if I remember, the statistics said or highlighted that at age of 5, our creativity is at 98%. And then, we go through the school system and that gets killed, or, it dips to 2%, which is a significant reduction in creativity. Why is that the case?
For most adults, yes, it's, and just to be clear, this study was the longest longitudinal study carried out by a doctor called George Lands. NASA wanted to uncover and identify, the creative types, So they did the study and then they transformed it into a longitudinal study, and they ended up testing over 200,000 adults, right? Looking at their creativity as they progress through life. So it's genius, really, the study itself. And 98% measure as genius level creative when you're 5 years old, that is insane, but also just so natural if you really think about it. And then it starts dipping. And what happens, by 12, it goes down to 38%, by 14, 15, 12. When you're an adult, young adult, like us, it goes down to 2%. That's one worrying. And then you would have to say, what's happening? Well, what's happening is you're being programmed. You're being conditioned. You're being told to, find the one right answer. You're being told to answer questions. You're being told that this is your identity and your values and your traditions. And, you're either in the in-group or part of the out-group. And, you start growing up and your hormones come into full throttle, and you want to make sense of your own identity and fit in the world. And, creativity just gets squeezed out of us. We're born. That's why I said we are creative. It's not a matter of, but for most of us, it gets, I don't want to say killed, because although it is killed, but let's be a little bit more diplomatic and say deeply buried. So, killed, then you would have to,
buried. You have to find ways to
bring it back from the dead. But buried, it can be uncovered, through personal excavation. And people going through some of my workshops on creativity, and my main point is to change the mindset as to, one, their belief in their own creative self. That's step number one. And then teach them processes to enhance their creativity. So super essential, super doable, indispensable, really, if you really want to be operating at the highest level of your game, right? Whether you're an individual, a team, or an organization. So
what is really flawed in these systems? Like, for example, one system that drives me crazy is this whole path that you have to go to high school and then graduate, go to college, maybe work a bit, and then automatically, what's next is getting higher education or something. Like, these are systems, right?
And then getting, an expensive watch, and then, getting, an expensive, fast car, and then you might get, a really big yacht. But hey, somebody on the ocean has a yacht bigger than you, so you're still not there. This is the illusion of the ultimate carrot and stick that we're really bamboozled and conned into buying into, right? So like the carrot, you'll get the carrot when you graduate from elementary. Like, okay, here I am. It's like, oh no, that was just preparation, man. Now you got to finish high school. And sort of like carrot is going to be waiting for you there. Finish high school and you're like, oh shit, this is, well, not really, not yet. You're kind of exploring and, what do you want to study? Again, what do you want to be? They ask you since you're young, what do you want to be? And that's anti-possibility mindset because you have to choose one thing, and then you go to college and the carrot is waiting for you at graduation and some, illuminary thought leader comes and does an amazing speech, sets you off on the world because your life starts now. Right? Everything has been a preparation. You are actually a work in progress. You're not finished ever, right? And then you go out and you discover sort of like, what the hell? This is real life. This is the whole thing we've been. And then you can play into the game as well. Be like, oh, corporate ladder. I want to climb that ladder. I want to be my boss. Great. And then you're your boss. So what? You buy the company. And then, you want the girl. And if you had the girl, then you want the younger girl. And it's just never enough. And then, and this is a real emergent, I see, kind of interesting social kind of property, because it's the ultimate kind of illusion, because you've chased the carrot all these years. And you're like, damn, I made it. I made money. And, you become like a Robin Sharma, the monk who sold his Ferrari. And you say, well, yeah, that's not it. That's not the carrot. All the material stuff are not really it. It's now the big spiritual carrot, right? And while we may argue that's a step in the right direction, however, that's a more sinister carrot, because you could still stay all your life. Like, for example, I was a seeker all my life. Like, I'm seeking. Well, yeah, I'm going to die seeking. Right. So I chose and I, prayed and connected and said, I don't want to be seeking all my life. And now I'm just happy not knowing. So that carrot and stick model is really a stick in our wheel. Right.
And it inhibits creativity.
It inhibits everything. It's anti-growth hormone. Right. It's climb into your little box. What are you? And people need that. You meet people and they're like, what do you do? Immediately. I like to ask people, what don't you do?
If you had to redesign those systems, what are some parameters that you would put in place to unbury that creativity that's been buried by these systems?
Okay, so I could first address it at the level of systems, right? Because there's two things. There's the individual, and then there's a system. The educational model is dead as we know it, right? It's just a matter of, how soon people realize it. And bringing more technology and saying, everybody has an iPad now, and, we have touch screens and, look, there's a hologram in the classroom. We're transforming education is as well. We need to look at the axioms, at the underlying assumptions that govern the system, right? Because the system was designed to train you to be a robot, essentially, right? Industrial Revolution, we needed people to come and press buttons. Henry Ford famously said that, why is it every time I ask for a pair of hands, a brain comes attached? I didn't want people to think for themselves. I needed people push the button. If you push it harder, I'll pay you a little bit better.
Yeah.
Right. And then we transitioned into now it's the knowledge economy, right? But even the knowledge economy, computer knows a lot more than you do. And with AI and general AI, knowledge is also becoming commoditized. So no one person has authority on knowledge. No one person in the world knows how to do a simple mouse. It's so distributed knowledge, right? So what comes is that, again, how can we have systems, an educational journey that speaks to the potential, speaks to what is possible? Well, for one thing, you have to, acknowledge that you don't have the answer. You don't have the answer as in, we tell our children that this is the way the world is. Full stop. Like really the world is. If you were living 3 centuries ago, the world would have been flat, right? The world is no longer flat, although there's a lot of flat earthers, which I find a fascinating phenomenon. So teaching our children how to question, how to ask better questions rather than how to jump to the right solution. Teaching them how to collaborate. I mean, it's funny. In school, if you collaborate, it's called cheating. In entrepreneurship, if you collaborate, it's called innovation. And allowing space for that curiosity of each individual, right, to flourish and for it to be a meandering path that's unique and beautiful, right? Just like a river, it's going to meander and have all these affluents, right? And it's just a beautiful pattern. And then we say, no, everybody needs to be in a batch. You're 6th grade, A, and you need to jump through all these hoops, and that's how you prove your worth. And also empowering youth and kids and professionals and leaders to embrace their beauty. Education is framed as you're not worthy enough, you don't have a degree, it's sort of like you just have to keep proving yourself, which plays into our ego's tendency to feel like we're not good enough and not worthy. So we start seeking to fill that. And that's not a recipe for happiness. And allowing conversation around what does it mean to be successful? For you, for me, having personalized journeys that evolve and adapt to each unique person's curiosities. Most of our, super scientists have either dropped out of school or, been kicked out because they weren't understood. So it requires, at least as far as education, it requires a whole system upgrade, not a new kind of like version 1.0.
Like overhaul. It needs the revamp.
Is it difficult? Yeah, it's not. You can't take education alone. You have to take it into the bigger, again, systems view of the modes of technological production, macroeconomics, right? And changing and challenging. Just playing a different game. And there are examples. I mean, you could say, if I am to create a school, I know right now it'll be quite different. There's a really great model for a school that you can check out, and the listeners. It's called the Bamboo Village, the Green School in Bali.
Right, the Bamboo Village.
Yeah, and it speaks to, the necessary attention that we need to give to the intellect, but also the heart. Right. So going from head to heart. And the way they teach these kids through these project-based learnings, there are no classrooms. There's a sense of community. They integrate parents and they integrate the community in such meaningful ways. And, they build bridges, like literally build bridges. The founder, the manager, sorry, not the founder of the school was telling me, our kids, you could be an architect and have built the world's biggest bridge. And if we ask you, architect, have you ever built a bridge? And be like, of course I built a bridge. I'm bridge man here, right? But no, have you really built a bridge? Like taken like stuff and sticks and, built a bridge? And most of them would have to answer no. These kids actually build bridges, right? And start understanding mechanics and trusses and, the material, the bamboo, how do you process it? How you tie things together, how to work in teams and collaboration and project manage.
So practical experience.
That's super important.
This is the end of part 1 of my conversation with our guest. The second half will continue next week, same time. So make sure you tune in for more exciting topics that we are yet to cover. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you were able to pick up a thing or two that could help you in business or life. If you would like to hear more conversations like these and you're not yet a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe through your preferred podcast platform. And follow us on Instagram at oneday.thepodcast And you could reach me on my personal Instagram account at @o_almajali. And last but not least, if you prefer to watch the full episode on video, then you can do so on our YouTube channel, One Day the Podcast. Till next time.